Welcome back, folks, to the Get a Grip on Life podcast. And today, I'm honored to have my colleague, Abraham Schnitzler, with us from CBC Lighting, but we're going to stay away from the lighting because I know all you life guys aren't interested in light bulbs. But I talk about it all the time on the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast, so you can go to getagriponlighting.com to check out those shows. And Abe has promised me that he's going to do a lighting podcast as well at some point with Greg and I. Remember, if you're looking to make digital video, make a podcast, do digital video, something like that, go to getagripstudios.com. We are the number one podcast studio in the city of Toronto, I would say. But for right now, I'm going to have a conversation with Abraham Schnitzler. Welcome to the show, Abe.
Good afternoon.
It's good to finally have you in studio.
Yes.
We've been talking about this for about a year now.
Yes.
But not the life show. I kind of tricked you into that. But now I got you here. I got my hooks into you.
Okay. So what's on your mind?
So we were talking a little bit about lighting, and we got off topic into some of the newer technologies you see as really driving innovation that lighting's kind of being absorbed into. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So as we all know, the utility companies are exhausted of the resources, and they're trying to move ahead in technology. Plus, they're also trying to conserve energy, and that's why they do a lot of these lighting programs, retrofit programs, etc., etc. But on the other hand, the technology is not sitting on the sidelines, and they're trying to get off on their own, where I think solar power and other alternative powers, wind power is making a lot of headways, but wind power is also controlled by the utilities mostly. It's not enough in there by itself, but there is a good drive now in technology for both battery operated and battery operated generational, not having it being charged by something that consumes a lot of energy, so it should be able to do more than just take energy by charging. So there's going to be some sun source energy and light source energy and whatever source energy, but there's some investment and some interest in alternative technologies to get power from anywhere on Earth. So
it's interesting because you're talking about a paradigm shift. So when we got into the era, the Anthropocene or whatever they call it, where people are acknowledging that human beings are having a major impact on the environment. And so we need to conserve. We need to use less wattage. But what you're saying to me is that, and what you said before we started recording, was that there's a shift from the focus being on conservation demand management towards local generation of energy. And this is going to become practical for end users to be able to manage their own generation of electricity?
Yeah, there might be a day where you're going to have something installed in your house and you wouldn't need outside energy.
I can't believe that.
Now,
you're saying like someone is going to have like a nuclear fission reactor in their basement or something?
I don't know what's going to be, but let's not forget, there's a supply and demand issue.
Sure.
And commerce is being driven by supply and demand.
Mm-hmm.
So the demand for energy is today by far greater than it used to be, because everything is electronic and digital, etc.,
sure.
etc. Versus 30, 40 years ago was not like that. And every product is being, there's DLC, there's Energy Star, there's a few other governmental agencies who are controlling the consumption of each and every product that comes out to consume less and less and less energy. So there is a drive there, but the drive was never in inventing energy, inventing ways to produce energy without needing the grid.
And now that's changing.
There is investments, there is opportunists like Elon Musk with Tesla,
mm-hmm.
that that are working to newer energy sources
See,
on a localized level.
yeah, see, that causes problems for utilities because utilities will not be able to pay for their infrastructure to, keep the power lines up. Like they get the money, like the demand money comes to pay for the infrastructure to keep the power lines, that grid-based model up and running.
Utilities are very profitable as far as we know. I mean, specifically in Canada, both Hydro-Quebec and Hydro-Ontario, BC Hydro and a few others in between, are very profitable companies. They sell tons of energy to the States. Across Canada, Canada has a lot of energy to be able to sell. So the utilities are probably maybe also investing if they see there is an opportunity for them. Let's say, like cell phones. The newer generation, and I think in the years to come, it's going to be even more and more. Landlines will be something of the past because everybody has a cell phone anyways. Why would they bother having a landline?
Sure.
So the same thing I think is going to be within the energy business, that if there's grid power and then there's going to be standalone power, the energy companies might bank on it as a business point of view and sell it, but they would sell it as an independent product, like a cell phone is being sold by Bell.
So they're going to sell, the utilities will be the ones.
I don't know. Okay. Again, this is all theory. This is not
We're just
factual.
Talking. We're just talking. We're seeing the end of like an LED lighting boom and the limits of conservation of demand management. And we're coming to the end of that sort of an economic cycle in a sense. It's funny. I hired a firm that specializes in generating lighting-related leads for business. So they make outbound calls for you. They do the lead in. They're really struggling to get us leads in Ontario. Really struggling, and that shows you that largely Ontario has been tapped for LED products.
Right. I mean,
I think it's going to go into decline
because first of all, Ontario. If you look at a North American map, Ontario is one of the cheaper ones in hydro dollars.
No, Ontario is one of the most expensive.
In Canada.
No, and across the board. Ontario is super expensive. Quebec's cheap.
Quebec is cheap,
but Ontario is very, very expensive.
Quebec is still about 8 cents a kilowatt hour or 6 cents
it's
a kilowatt hour.
It's about 15 cents in
15
Ontario.
cents here.
Yeah.
Okay, go to New York or go to California. We're talking in the 20s to 30 cents.
Is that right?
Yes, a kilowatt hour USD.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
So people are being incented to push towards that. And you know what's interesting? So we started to go down the path on our last conversation, and I just wanted to kind of expand this a little bit. So we were talking about world population. You're talking about 9.5 billion people coming in the next 20 years or whatever. And if all of them want to live a Western lifestyle, it's like 100 billion people. This creates problems.
Yes, it does. And I think I started to tell you that in the Far East, if we think pollution is tough here, it's by far worse there. I mean, you can literally see the pollution in the air.
Oh, sure. When I was in Shanghai, I took pictures out of my window. It was like the London fog or something.
Right, right. Now, we don't see, going to Al Gore's global warming situation.
Sure.
I think he is right, but we don't see more damage in the areas where we see almost the fog, as you mentioned, where we see the pollution like really striking out. We don't see more damage there than we see in places where we have done things to prevent that. And I don't know why, but that side of the world will definitely have to do something for pollution if they didn't do anything yet so far.
Well, when I was in Hong Kong, I think in 2015, there was a fire in Indonesia, and it basically blanketed the entire Southeast Asia in a fog of soot. You could see it on the map, and you could see it out your hotel room window. Like, you look at it on your computer, like, holy mackerel, that's enormous. That's the size of the continental United States.
Right.
And so it was interesting. When I was in China, I was talking to different people, and we were having this conversation with a fellow, and he made a remark to me that I thought was really interesting. But he said it in a way that was kind of, I don't know, it was signaled something else to me. I don't know what it was. He said, Canada has so much water, and he's like said that to me.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, we do have a lot of water. And he's like, we need water. Like, China needs water. Like, they don't have water like we have, like
Right.
their aquifers are 200 feet down now. They're think about how many toilets get flushed in Shanghai every day, right?
Sure.
And into the Yellow River. And so there's some geopolitical issues, and you see these strains and stresses, and all across our society, you have different authors coming out, like Steven Pinker, saying, no, things have never been better. But I'm not sure everyone thinks that.
You see, the other thing is society in China are getting richer. The upper society, the people who used to make, like the middle upper class in China, that they used to make 3-4 figures, are making now 5 and 6 figures.
Sure.
So the population in China, when they're sitting into their expensive vehicles, going into their expensive homes, sending their kids into private and expensive schools, etc., they will want to have a lifestyle, like you said, of the Americans, with proper air, proper water, proper everything, so they feel that they are in the Uber of society.
The elite level.
Yes,
Sure.
yes. And they're getting more and more. There's more millionaires coming out of China in the last couple of years than almost anywhere else.
So you have a Hasidic Jewish heritage.
Correct.
And do you guys within your churches, do you discuss these kinds of issues, the global issues?
So global issues on a Jewish,
because you're a worldwide community.
Yes. So on a Jewish belief or a religious belief is that the Creator takes care of everything. So meaning, of course, he gives wisdom to people to work, like doctors heal, scientists work their stuff to make the world a better place, and everything is geared to make the world a better place. But to say that 9.5 billion is unsustainable, or whatever number is unsustainable, we believe it's in God's hands to control that. It's not in our hand. It doesn't fall on us to control that. We can control proper behavior. We can control proper education and other things that is more geared to us, that as a society or as citizens of the world to participate in what the world needs, but not as like managing the world is really not what is for mankind to do, because there's a lot of greater wisdom out there that we don't even understand how to manage it.
So there's limits to human acumen.
There's limits to humans.
Yeah, and we have a limited ability. So there's problems that if they go beyond a certain time frame, it's impossible for humans to even imagine them. So if you say a problem has a 20-year life cycle, a 30-year life cycle, you're going to have it's like building the St. Peter's Basilica. It's going to take generations to build the basilica, right? And humans often, in most of the time, are not able to think that far along down the road.
Not only that, they're not capable. They don't know a lot of scientists know a lot, but they don't know the exact source or the exact way things work, because the Creator who made it knows best. So to for a human being to say that this doesn't look good, maybe he doesn't see the full picture that the creator sees.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's the same thing as you take an engineer who designed a building, and there is some problems in the building, the engineer will be able to guide you how to get out of the problem because he built it.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing with the creator, that he made the world and he made the people, and he knows how the people in the world could come along.
There's so much nihilism in Western countries now. Do you know what I mean when I say that? Like nihilistic beliefs. Like it seems like people are not as hopeful as they used to be. That creator message, is that an insulation against the nihilism that seems to be happening in our culture?
I don't know, but I will go back 300 years, 200 years, and 100 years. So 300 years ago, first of all, the world population was a lot smaller than it is now. The knowledge of the people were by far less than it's now on almost every subject. Then it started to get to the mechanical age. The mechanical age, and then the mechanical age brought with it the travel systems, like the trains and the cars and the automobiles, etc., etc. And then came the electronic advancements in the world. So 100 years ago, I think nobody would ask, how would the world look in 50 years from now? Or so it was not something that was felt a need to ask, because the advancements were a lot slower than today. Today, the advancements is by far faster, and therefore people are thinking, "Oh, what am I going to do in 50 years from now? How is the world going to look in 50 years from now?" And some people are starting to panic as if it's their problem. If you would think that 50 years ago, how the world would look 50 years from now, you would never imagine the world to be the way it is now.
No.
So how can you predict 50 years from now? You can't. Not because you're not smart enough, because you don't have the tools. You don't know the condensity of the world to know what the world needs to be there, and you don't know the population, and you don't know the mix of the population. I mean, look at immigration and from countries around the world, which the population of the United States, for example, the South American population in the United States used to be
minimal,
and now it's a substantial size. It's 30-40 million or more. So it's about 10% of the population, give or take. And the whole southern...
And the younger part of it.
Yeah. And the southern border, almost all states speak Spanish as a second language or as a first language sometimes. So the adaptation of the peoples has nothing to do with this, with the existence of the world from a managemental point of view.
So your people, which when I say that, and I mean it in a sense of with respect, you've been through a lot in the last couple hundred years.
Yes.
You've seen real crises.
Yes, we have seen.
Yeah. And so there's a sense of that people that are prognosticating about future doom lack the humility of what they should have at the moment. They should be more humble, and they should go about their life in an efficient manner, learn as much as they can, and be as good a citizens as they can. But prognosticating on future doom is irresponsible, or what exactly are you saying?
What I'm saying is, it does not belong. We should look at a human being from a perspective that we're limited, and we are a creation by itself. We did not make ourselves. Somebody made us, the human race. So whoever made us and whoever made the surroundings of us that we fit in and the way we breathe and we eat and we do our daily lives, etc., knows the ingredients of the longevity of the environment to keep us in it.
And so when you have go ahead.
Sorry, that doesn't mean that we should deliberately destroy the environment.
Of course.
It means sustain, try to conserve, be a world citizen the most you can be. But don't take on your shoulders something that's bigger than you.
That's a mature perspective from a man that's, lived a life of business and I'm sure you have a family and a wife and kids. And it's hard for people in their 20s to have that kind of perspective on the world, a wise perspective like that. I'm only coming into that now from my perspective. When you're young, you think you can change the world. You think you can take on all the problems and do all this sort of stuff. And a lot of people are in this like emotional roller coaster in their life where they feel like they're going to be great and they're on Facebook or whatever. And then they're down again because they see some video of plastic in the ocean and they think the world's coming to an end. How does your religion insulate you from that? Or how does it, like when you look at your children, are your children practicing your faith as well?
100%.
And how is it that your faith protects them from the nihilism of the West right now?
So we're probably some of the more restricted communities that we try for the next generation or for the kids. They're not on Facebook. They're not on Twitter. They're not on social media at all. Mm-hmm. We even try to keep them away from the internet and try to keep them away from things that could bring evil. Doesn't mean that the internet is evil. It doesn't mean that technology is evil. But what it means is they don't need to know that in a remote city somewhere there was a shooting. They don't need to know that.
Sure.
Nothing will happen to them if they don't know that.
Of course.
But they should be educated.
Preserves their innocence.
Right. But they should be educated to know life experience, to know geography, to know languages, to know art, to know science, etc., etc. They teach that all day.
And then the schools avoid the phone use in the schools.
Well, we are not encouraged to give kids phones. Mm-hmm. Why should a kid, again, I can tell you an old joke, which is not so old, but a guy asks somebody, I don't understand why you have a phone on your side when you can go and use a public phone. Mm-hmm. So, meaning to say, in today's generation, a public phone is like ancient.
Anachronistic almost.
Yes. So, but we encourage our kids not to use, or we don't give phones to our kids on a regular basis unless she goes somewhere alone or something. She'd have some security. So we don't do it in a way that doesn't make sense. We protect our kids and we try to give them phones. We even have, in our community, we have the old flip phone. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are using that because that doesn't have the technology that the iPhone has, that you can get to the internet very fast, etc., etc. So they're just using it as a phone where they need it, and that's what I would be comfortable to give to my kid.
Why is it, let me ask you this, so there's a lot of people that, everybody knows some Jewish people if you live in Toronto.
Correct.
But people look at you and they say, "What's going on with those guys? They wear the outfit, they got the hat, they got the big hat sometimes, the big kind of cowboy looking hat."
Yes.
Yeah, and then the tassels and all that. Is that a uniform? Is it a cultural legacy? Is it trying to project the difference in your community? What is it?
Okay. It's very complex to answer this in one foot. So I will try for you to understand the most I can comprehend in a short conversation.
Okay.
Actually, this week, coming Sunday, is the day that we got the Torah on Mount Sinai.
Okay.
The Torah on Mount Sinai got us 613 commandments. The tassels, for example, is one of the commandments. The kippah is not.
Okay.
The kippah is more worn for respect, that we know somebody is above us all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very complex and hard to explain each and everything. For example, the beard and the side locks
Mm-hmm.
is also a commandment. Now, the commandment is not that you have to grow your beard. You're not allowed to raise your beard with a specific sharp razor. There's like it doesn't grow back, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the exact terminology of it, but you don't have to have a beard. You're allowed to shave. There's a lot of Jewish people who shave who are religious. So, as a Jew, if you want to keep a beard, that's fine. If you want to shave, that's fine too. But it gives you a Jewish identity to have a beard.
Mm.
So it's not like a real commandment to have a beard. It's complex to understand.
Okay. And so there's a cultural element and a religious element.
Yes.
Okay. What's more important to you, your Canadian nationality or your religion?
Religion. And I'll tell
I
you.
knew the answer to that. But
Okay, but I'm a Canadian Jew.
Right.
But I'm more a Jewish Canadian.
Right.
There's European Jews.
Mm-hmm.
And there's Chinese Jews and African Jews and U.S. Jews. So, but the first thing is their religion or their faith versus their country that they live in.
Mm-hmm. So freedom of religion is very important to you then in a culture.
Yes.
So what do you make right now? Like when you look at it, so, anti-Semitism has been with us always and will always be with us. And, I think that sort of thing, just in reference to what you're saying, I've talked to a lot of people about race and race relations and different sort of things. And this idea that someone's either racist or not is silly. I think there's like a spectrum that people are on. You understand what I mean? When it comes to different cultures. And they're either low on the spectrum or they're high on the spectrum. And I don't care whether you're black, white, Jew, Catholic, Christian, whatever. You are who you are, and you're on that spectrum of preferring your own kind over others. And this is going to be, hopefully someone doesn't cut this out and put it out. But I think everyone's on that spectrum to a certain degree. At this end, you have some Nazi guy, right? And on the other end, you have just a person that is a person that's trying their best. But deep in their mind, there's a sense of, wanting to belong, which is why, you see Asians set up communities together. Like I interviewed a city councillor for this ward of Toronto, and she said there's a big challenge with existing Torontonians accepting, new Canadians, but with the new Canadian groups getting together and working together on issues.
As no Canadians.
Yeah, like a group of, let's say, Armenians working with a group of Tamils, say, on a shared issue. So that's a harder thing to do. So I think that doesn't make them racist. That just means that they're not interested in working with those people, which is the lower end of the spectrum, or whatever it is. There's a lot of talk of anti-Semitism, especially in Europe right now with Corbyn, and in France there's talk of anti-Semitism. In the United States, you hear like this emergence of the alt-right, and you hear again the emergence of all these, who can we blame for our woes kind of thing that you saw, which is you saw in the 20s and 30s in Germany, this idea looking for a scapegoat. How you guys are so obviously Jewish.
Yes.
Like it's like if you're gonna look at somebody, you're gonna say Abe, right? It's all his fault or whatever. How do you guys monitor this? And there's there indexes or levels that you're
again? I'm not personally in the level to monitor it, and we as a community. I mean, if there's a scare or something, if there's something in our community or even in the world that could scare us, we would have meeting with elected officials or with locals to make sure that we're safe, etc., etc. But I want to get to the point where the most people who come to Western society from either suppressed or even from communist area.
Sure.
They want to explore. They want to throw away their old and start to blend into the society.
But you guys don't want to do it.
That's what I want to say. We want to keep ourselves, because if we blend in, we're gonna be wiped out.
Sure.
Oh, and therefore we need to keep separate schools, separate place of worship, separate. Again,
but that makes you guys a target for.
That makes us a target, but as a citizen, we're good citizens wherever we live.
Sure.
So, and we also try to be extremely humble, because the more we stick out, the more people will say the Jews. Look at this guy. Look at that guy. We're trained that wherever we go, people look at us. How does he behave? How does he drive? How does he work? How is he interact?
Is he fair in business?
Is he fair in business?
Sure.
So every aspect is more with a magnifying glass versus just regular people in society.
That's probably a blessing in a way.
Whatever it is, it's a fact.
Let me ask you something that I don't know if I want to know the answer to, but do you guys have security around your synagogues and around your schools?
No, but some of them have around the high holy days or on holiday occasions where everybody is there, like almost nobody's home, etc.
Yeah. I'm glad about that. I'm glad Canada's still safe for that, for people.
Yeah, and we say we love Canada. We love. I would say Canada, in a way, is for me and some people in my community, is even a better place than the United States, because Canada is more friendly than the U.S. So Canada, I would say, is a very, very good place to live. Quality of life is good. We enjoy our religious freedom and our freedoms.
When you guys are celebrating your wedding, or what have you, there's a lot of people that look at Hasidic Jews and they say, well, they discriminate against women in their community.
There is a saying in Talmud.
Okay.
You should love your wife as yourself, and you should respect her more than yourself.
But that's sort of implying that she's a possession to be cared for.
But she's also...
I'm not saying whether I disagree with your opinion. I'm just pointing out what the criticism would be.
She's not a possession, but in the house, the man is the queen, the king, and the woman is the queen.
Okay.
This is how it's being looked at. The women are not suppressed; they're just not encouraged to do men's work,
which is a cultural construction of your,
give or take, yes,
of your community.
So by us, we have less women in the workforce than we have men, because, for example, myself, I want my wife to be a housewife. I want my kids who come.
How dare you?
So I want my kids, when they come home from school,
to be with their mother,
to be somebody is waiting for them like
to collect them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Instead of the nanny or nobody.
Yeah, sure. So,
and because we have a large family value, and the family value is to be with the kids the most we can, and to give them what they need all the time. And you don't see less stress in society where there's two breadwinners. You don't see that. There's still a lot of stress. Versus by us, where most of the families, the women don't work, the stress is not on the woman. So the financial burden is on the man.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't suppress women.
But they have to shave their heads?
Again, that's not a commandment.
Okay.
That's that's only 400 years old, 450 years old.
You know what's interesting about
and that's a small portion of religious Jews do that. So it depends. I mean, I'm going very deep in
Sure.
in this specific aspect. So if you are from a Russian, Ukrainian area, you're not obliged to shave your head. But if you're more in the Middle European countries,
Germany and Poland and that?
Germany, Poland, you are, because there was 400 rabbis. There was a bunch of rabbis from 4 different countries together who made that who made that commandment, and the Jewish women took it on themselves to keep it.
But they're born into that.
They're born into that.
So here would be I'm going to play devil's advocate because I don't think it's my position to comment on other people's cultural practices, and I think it's also dicey when it comes to male-female relations because I actually think that the West has it screwed up. Okay, to be honest with you, I think women in the West are under more stress and are more pressured for their body image, by the media, through Facebook, and having to work a job and then be a mom. And I think there's a lot of issues there that we don't have right. But one of the most racist things things that I ever see is when Western people point at, Hasidic Jews and Muslims and the women wearing the hijab, saying, look at those women that are oppressed and look at how horribly they have it and all this sort of stuff. And I often think to them, do you know any of those women? Have you ever talked to them about what they think? Because, I'd love to bring one of them on my show. They can wear the hijab, and I want to talk to them about whether they hate that or not, and if they feel oppressed, or perhaps they feel free. I don't know. Because to me, I've never spoken to any women from the Hasidic Jewish community. Am I allowed? I don't know. Would they be allowed to come on the show?
I don't. Again, if they choose to,
yeah, okay,
it's fine.
So I'd love to talk with one of them because there's like this presumption that in the West that women that are not liberated in the manner that they are in Western countries are somehow tortured through this oppressive patriarchal structure that exists, and everyone just assumes that this is so, and that if those women were just free of that tyrannical structure of Hasidic Judaism, or I don't know what the name of it is, or ultra-Orthodox Judaism, or they were free of that, just because a woman wears a hijab doesn't mean she's married to a terrorist, okay?
Correct.
It could just be just a nice Muslim guy who's a business guy, and he's a good guy, and he practices faith to the full extent.
Correct. So you look at the Jewish woman. They're happy. They are not going depressed. They're.
I like to see the rates of that. Actually, I wonder if they're. It's interesting because I have 3 daughters, and I actually think the Western culture is terribly difficult to be a woman in. Actually, I really think it is. So many women are not having children. So many women, okay, please don't. If anyone's listening to this, they're like, how dare you? I think having children is the most meaningful thing you can do in life, Abe. I don't think there's any, I don't care if you're a Hasidic Jew, a Catholic, you sell light bulbs every day or not. It's irrelevant. I think there's nothing, and I think anybody who's a parent, the vast majority of them, 99% would say the most meaningful thing in my life is my children and my family.
Correct.
Right?
Now, what do you, let's say you live a life of 90 years.
Yeah.
You have no kids. what are you left with?
Nothing.
You feel very accomplished when you have kids and you see them flourish and
Sure.
you see them having kids and you have grandkids and you see the world goes further. If you don't have any kids, the world stops.
I was on a cruise. No, I was on a vacation in the Dominican Republic I don't know, 10 years ago. And so I have 4 children. And my wife and I were there. And at that time we had, it was the first time we ever got away. And my wife was pregnant and we had 2 little ones.
Mm-hmm.
And this elderly lady came up to my wife and she's like, you're doing the right thing, sweetie. You're really doing the right thing. And I was like, okay. I mean, I feel like I'm broke and I'm driving an old car. I'm, barely making payments. And I'm trying to get on this vacation. And so she's encouraging my wife and she's like, have more kids. And then they started talking and they were having a bite to eat together. And she said, I didn't have any children.
Okay.
I spent my life working on a career and I really was, into my career and I really regret not putting down roots and having a family. And then the 2 of them were together, and then later on she was crying a little bit, and then the next day she felt really awkward with us, which is natural, of course. She poured her heart out, but I think a lot of women in the West are duped into thinking that the way we have it is so great, and that chasing a career and multiple partners throughout your life and experimenting sexually and doing all these things is the way to live a wonderful life. And I actually think if you look at Christianity or the messages of the ancient faiths, they would tell you that's the road to hell, actually.
Right. So by us, we get married early, and the world looks at us as, how come they get married so early? They don't have a career yet. They don't have a path of life.
Sure.
But a mother that's 22 years old
Mm-hmm.
or 27 years old has a lot more energy to her kids than a 35-year-old mother.
And you know what? And I hate to bring this up, but the older a woman gets, the more likely she is to have complications in having children.
Yeah. So even besides that point,
Yeah, okay.
I'm just trying to say
Sure.
that the younger you are, the more energy you have,
Sure.
and the more you can cater to your kids.
So what are the age ranges of marriage in your community, Canada?
18 and up.
18 and up. So they generally marry in their late teenage years or early 20s.
Yeah, it's more 18, 19, 20, 21. That's the majority.
If you weren't living in Canada, if you were living in a country that was, and this is just a question I think I know the answer to it, but if you were living outside Canada, are you guys allowed to take multiple wives?
No, multiple wives has been banned about 1,000 years.
By the ultra-Orthodox community?
No, by Jews.
By Jews.
Because
Okay.
one of the major rabbis who are in charge of Jewish law
Okay.
made that law.
So there's a canon Jewish law that governs all Jewish people as well as...
So we discussed earlier about the Talmud.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's the originating there's the Torah, the 5 books of Moses.
Mm-hmm.
Then there is the Talmud,
And that was the one written in Iraq. Correct?
written in Babylonian in Babylonian country.
In exile.
Yeah, exile. Okay. At that time, they also wrote Talmud in Israel. So there's 2 Talmuds. There's a Babylonian Talmud and an Israeli Talmud.
Okay.
Okay. But the most important is the Babylonian Talmud. And then after that, about 6, 7... So the Talmud was made about 1900 years ago. And about, or less, 1600 years ago. And then about 600, 700 years after, started in the generation of the Maimonides. Maimonides also wrote books of law, Jewish law. So in his time, 100 years before and after, there was the master rabbis who started to write books of law from the Talmud. And then 400 years ago, 450 years ago, there was what's now called the books of law, which is called in Jewish, or in it's called Shulchan Aruch, which means it's The Book of Law. So it's a bit smaller than the Talmud, but the books of law will say what the Talmud says. Let's say in Talmud there is 2 opinions or 3 opinions on an issue. There is certain rules how to, when there's 3 opinions, what do you do? So there's certain ways of concluding, and then it got written in the books of law. And now we follow the books of law. So,
do you have your own courts?
Yes, it's called the Best Din.
The Best Din.
Or a Beth Din.
So two Hasidic Jews get into an argument over money.
Yes.
Do you get sued in small claims court, or do you go to the Best Din?
We go to the Best Din.
Okay.
Usually. Sometimes the not so good people or some evil will not go to the Best Din. So the Best Din gives them a exemption to go to small claims court or to court. But we try to solve ourselves, and we're also encouraged to make I wouldn't call it sacrifices, but I would call compromises. So for example, if one says you owe me $100,000, and the other says, no, I owe you 70. So there's a $30,000 difference. So you either compromise 15-15, or you compromise, you give him a faster, whatever. In the books of law, there is that when you cannot make peace with each other, try to compromise. So it should be peace.
Is there any guys that have bad reputations in your synagogue? They're like, oh, every time this guy is a compromised guy, every time. Is that you?
No. Well,
don't do business with Abe. He's going to bring you for the Best Din. What's it called?
Best Din.
Best Din. He's going to bring you before the Best Din and make you make a compromise.
No, I mean, you can check it out, but I'm fine.
I got another question for you.
Mm-hmm.
And often I do actually look at these alt-right kind of websites just because I'm interested. I want to see what these guys are up to and what they're saying. Oftentimes, one of the things that comes up is the Kol Nidra.
Kol Nidra, okay.
What is that? Explain that to people, and what is that? What is the meaning of that?
So, Yom Kippur is a day of repentance.
Okay.
Okay. When the Jews did the golden calf in
and at the base of Mount Sinai with
base
Aaron.
Mount Sinai, yes. Moses went 3 times back to heaven to beg for forgiveness, and the 3rd time he came back, and God told him, "I forgave the Jews." Okay, so that's the day of repentance every year, because that day God said, "I forgive them." So therefore, every year, once a year, we have a day of repentance, and that's when we fast in order to get cleansed from our sins.
People say that that is used as a way of being able to take advantage of non-Jewish people and be forgiven for it. That's the claim.
I don't understand the claim.
Well, that somehow you're able to, every Yom Kippur, you're able to come back, and if you've,
So it says in Talmud, and it's that if you say, "I will sin and repent, and I will sin and repent," then you're not getting the forgiveness.
Is there a difference if you in your community, if you were to act a certain way with a Hasidic Jew or with a non-Jew, would there be a difference in how it would be looked at?
I mean, you should love all people, but we have a commandment to love our friend as our own.
And that's an internal commandment for the community?
Yes.
Okay.
So, but still, we're good to all societies, and they say by us, and you probably heard of it, charity begins at home.
Sure.
So it's not like if I would see someone falling down, that I wouldn't go to help him.
Of course.
Regardless how he looks, what he is, if he's a human being, I'll come and help him, even if it would be an animal.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one commandment that you're not allowed to do pain for animals, for example. That's one of the 613 commandments.
613, you said?
Yeah, I told you that.
How do you remember? I know, but how do you remember 613 of them? I have trouble with 10, buddy.
Well, first of all, I don't memorize everything because a big portion of it is only in the time of the temple, because there was a lot of things with the priests and the sacrifices of the animals, etc., at that time.
Sure.
Which
you guys don't sacrifice animals anymore.
No. A couple of hundred commandments are unfortunately no longer valid. It's not no longer valid. We cannot keep them because we don't have a temple.
Do you want to rebuild the temple? Do you want to see that? Is your community actively working towards the rebuilding of the Jewish temple in Israel?
No, we believe that a Messiah is going to come.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have a third temple. It will come direct from heaven down.
The temple will come direct from heaven down. You know that Christians believe that day will be the end of the world?
We'll shake hands that day and we'll see what happens to the world.
I think that's a great place to cut it out. Abe, I would love to, man. Always a pleasure speaking to you, man.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for talking to me.
Pleasure.
Thank you, folks, for listening to the Get a Grip on Life podcast. We thank Abe Schnitzler from CBC Lighting. Go to cbclighting.com to check him out. And if you want to start a podcast, if you want to make digital media, go to getagripstudios.com. Our pricing's up on the website there. You don't even have to come here. You can log in digitally from our virtual studio. Thank you for listening. I'm very grateful to all you people out there. Bye for now.